What is going on, New York Giant fans? Welcome back to another video here on the Big Blue in the Bronx YouTube channel. It's been a while since I've done a video, but wanted to take a little bit of a break. Obviously, there's nothing really happening with the New York Giants, and we've been doing the Yankee streams, of course. And if you haven't already, please go over and subscribe to Nick's Cast, Luca's new YouTube channel. He will begin the off-season content shortly for the New York Knicks. But I figure we do some way too early predictions for the New York Giants 2024 schedule. If you haven't already, like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops or drops. We're still trying to get that 2,000 mark. I know it's been slow, but we're trying to get there as fast as possible, and you guys can do your part as well. So let's talk maybe about a minute or two about expectations for the New York Giants. In my personal opinion, I believe the New York Giants, based on the moves they made this offseason, should be making the playoffs. Not in prediction-wise, but expectation-wise. You traded for and extended Brian Burns. You signed some key offensive linemen, and you drafted Malik Neighbors. You decided not to go quarterback at all and say, Daniel Jones is our guy, we're going to stick to him, and we're going to sit on that, right? So you make all those moves, and the division is getting better. The division actually might be still the same. I think the Cowboys are still a threat to the Giants despite some of the moves they made this offseason. Washington, I believe they're getting better. I think it's going to take them a little bit. And the Eagles, they're still there, right? Obviously, signing Saquon Barkley, doing a couple other different things, but mostly the same team. Also having some nice draft picks with Cooper DeJean and Kenyon Mitchell. But as far as the New York Giants go, I expect them, expectation-wise, again, to make the playoffs because these are win-now moves, right? You had a down year last year. You really didn't rebuild whatever is going on with the Darren Waller situation, but you retooled your defense, you retooled your offense, and you should make the playoffs, at least a wild card. But again, we'll see what happens. Season is so far away from now, unfortunately. So we'll get right into it. And by the way, also keep track of this. Within the next few weeks, we're going to be starting our roster bubble series. So, while I will be away, there's going to be content for you guys, the roster bubble series, all types of guys who are on the roster bubble and stuff like that. But anyway, let's get right into it. Week 1 versus Minnesota. Now, I talked about each of these games in the breakdown video, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit and then give my prediction. I think this is a New York Giants win. You're starting off at home. These two teams played in the playoffs almost 2 years ago, and a little bit of a different stage for the Vikings, just a little bit, right? They did get a new running back in Aaron Jones. The Vikings also drafted a quarterback in J.J. McCarthy, but I don't think he's going to be ready. I think it's going to be Sam Darnold, the quarterback, and he could flourish, right? We saw in Carolina he played all right with Christian McCaffrey and the weapons they had there, and he does have T.J. Hawkinson. He does have Justin Jefferson. We'll see what makes of that situation, but I feel like the New York Giants, if they do stuff well in the defense, I wouldn't say gels 100% right away, but they could get to Darnold. They could make Darnold look stupid if Shane Bowen is this defensive coordinator that everyone thinks he is, especially with this offensive line. It's not great. Darisaw is one of the best tackles in the league when healthy, but I think the rest of their offensive line is about average, still vulnerable. And their defense, they didn't make too many moves this offseason, but they did draft two key guys. They drafted Kyrie Jackson out of Oregon, and they're bringing back Mekhi Blackman, who was pretty good at USC last year. And they also drafted another edge rusher. They actually have two new edge rushers, Jonathan Greenard from the Texans, and they also have Dallas Turner from Alabama. So those guys are going to be getting their first run at it in purple uniforms. But I think the Giants take this game in, not in the way of, Daniel Jones is going to dominate the Vikings like 2022. I think this is going to be a bit of a feel your way out type situation. And I think this is going to be a grind and grit game, if I'm being completely honest, because you won't see 100 yards from Malik Neighbors right off the bat. I think there's going to be some time between him and Daniel Jones, speaking on an unbiased perspective, and it's going to have to go through the running game. So I think the Vikings, they'll probably have to focus on running the football. Can the Giants stop that? And the other side is, the defense. For the Vikings, are they vulnerable? And the Giants just need to play keep away, but like a better version of keep away than in years past. But Giants focus, it's the defense. The Vikings focus, it's the offense in a way of just buying clock. But I think the Giants are going to win this game. So we move over to going to Washington the next week, and I have the Giants winning this game too. Because Dan Quinn is a retread, but he's a new head coach in Washington. Cliff Kingsbury, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, and Joe Witt Jr. They do have some solid coaches on the staff. They also have Bobby Johnson, an O-line coach. I thought I'd add that in. But nonetheless, they have Jaden Daniels. Now, I don't know if he's going to start. I will suspect that he's going to start right away. But I have to give the Commanders credit. They did get a good draft under them, right? They drafted Brandon Coleman, offensive lineman. They drafted Ben Sinnott, who could be a nice duo with Zach Ertz, and a couple other different guys they drafted. They also got Austin Eckler in the offseason from the Los Angeles Chargers. So they made a couple of good draft picks, and they did make a few key signings on the defensive side of the ball. A couple of guys they brought over from Dallas, like Noah Igbenogany, who's more of a special teamer, and they also brought over Dorrance Armstrong, who's going to be the top pass rusher, not the interior pass rusher, but the top pass rusher, of course, because no Montez Sweat, no Chase Young. But you're hoping that secondary gets better. Michael Davis was also signed from the Chargers. Mike Sainristil still was drafted out of Michigan. Benjamin St-Juste coming into another year. So you have a couple other different guys, and I think this team is still going to be molding it together. I really like the Commanders' future in an unbiased perspective. I think they're a very young team, but they're not going to figure it out right away. I think Jaden Daniels has some flaws in his game, and I don't know that it would be any service to start Mariota. And I think that the Commanders will actually play the Giants worse than the Vikings. I think the Giants will actually play... No, let me phrase that again. Vikings will play the Giants better than the Commanders will, because I think the Commanders, they're a young team, and they're still getting things together. Jaden Daniels... obviously throw into a guy like Terry McLaurin, but it's not going to have the impact as, Darnold, throwing to Jefferson. Again, Jaden Daniels, Sam Darnold have different flaws, different levels of experience, but as far as Jaden Daniels goes, I think he's got ways to go. I think he could be definitely a good quarterback in this league, but some of the pocket decisions and the processing over the middle of the field, there's other errors, of course, and also knowing when to slide and stuff like that and not be injury vulnerable. So the New York Giants take that game. And the next game, which I could possibly be going to, as of right now, it looks like that. The New York Giants and the Cleveland Browns. The last time the New York Giants were in Cleveland for a regular season game, they won. That was 2016. The New York Giants won that one with Eli Manning. But I have them losing this game, right? Now, it's not going to be centered around, this dominating offense of the Cleveland Browns. They did fire their offensive coordinator in Alex Van Pelt, so they're really looking for a good year out of Deshaun Watson. They hired Ken Dorsey, who obviously came over from Buffalo. Kevin Stefanski, in my opinion, is still a good coach. Defensively, they're very good with Jim Schwartz, and that's where the Giants are going to struggle in this game. I think the Cleveland Browns will put up enough points, a solid amount, not like, they're going to score 30 on us. I don't think so. I think the Giants will be at a solid route. Defensively, Deshaun Watson, he'll make his passes and whatever. We will see if Nick Chubb is back by this time. Hopefully he is for, health's sake. But if you're a Giants fan, you're saying, okay, just start Pierre Strong, Jerome Ford, Deontay Foreman, whoever. They got a solid receiving core. They traded for Jerry Jeudy. They have Amari Cooper. They have David Njoku under contract. They have a solid offensive line. Also, the offensive line lost Bill Callahan, who went over to coach under his son, Brian Callahan, with the Tennessee Titans. But nonetheless, he moved to the defense, and that's really, again, what scares me. Quentin Jefferson had some really good numbers with the New York Jets last season as a defensive tackle. You have Shelby Harris in the middle. You have Michael Hall, who you drafted out of Ohio State, Sam Kamara, all these other different guys. But the one guy that gets me, of course, is Myles Garrett. Now, he's not going to be playing on Andrew Thomas's side a lot, in my personal opinion. I think that this is going to be a game where Evan Neal has to prove himself. I don't think he will personally, but Garrett, Neal, based on the past, I think Myles Garrett's going to win his fair share of matchups. And it's not really just, the front four. It's the secondary as well. The linebacking core is okay, but the secondary, when healthy, is pretty good. Greg Newsome, he is a key guy for that secondary. Grant Delpit, who they signed to an extension. And Denzel Ward, who, again, when healthy, is one of the best corners in the league. It's just he hasn't been healthy over the last few years. And they also have their fair share of solid depth pieces. And also, it's a Browns home game. So the New York Giants, I have them taking the L in this game to the Cleveland Browns. Now this one, next one, Dallas Cowboys, Thursday Night Football. This is a loss for the New York Giants. I feel like the Giants, once again, they don't do well on prime time. And the Dallas Cowboys just always have bit the New York Giants. Now, if it wasn't on prime time, I might change my decision. They do have Zeke Elliott back. They have Dak Prescott, Brandon Cooks, and CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, we'll see what happens with those contract negotiations and whatnot. Their tight end room is solid. Their offensive line did take a couple of hits. They lost a guy in Tyler Biadasz. They drafted Tyler Guyton. They have a couple of depth pieces in there as well. They drafted Cooper Beebe, which I really like. He's probably going to fill in at center. But defensively, I think they could take a hit. But I feel like this game, the New York Giants are still not going to be this great offense that everybody seems to make it out to be. Again, they did lose Dorrance Armstrong, but when you have a presence of DeMarcus Lawrence, Osa Odighizuwa, and a guy like Micah Parsons on your defense, well, you're not necessarily worrying too much at all. Obviously, the linebacking core outside of Parsons is okay. They did sign Eric Kendricks from the Chargers, but the secondary, I think, could still take advantage of Daniel Jones' weaknesses. Marquise Bell, who played linebacker and safety, kind of that hybrid role. Deron Bland, who had, I think, the most pick sixes last year. I don't think that's sustainable, but I think he will get his fair share of good plays. Jordan Lewis and also Trayvon Diggs. So I think that's still a pretty solid defense, and I think they're going to wreak havoc. And, I get it. We talked last game about, okay, Myles Garrett and this, that, and the other thing with Evan Neal. I think this is the game where Evan Neal does have to prove himself because he's faced Parsons before. He's faced DeMarcus Lawrence before. He's got to win one of these battles if he's a top 7 pick, or at least, the athlete we thought we were drafting at the 7th overall pick. So the New York Giants head over to Seattle, and I have them losing this game. This is a new coaching staff entirely. No more Pete Carroll. This is Mike McDonald and company, Leslie Frazier. He is the assistant head coach with Ryan Grubb as the OC, coming over from Washington, and Aiden Durd, the defensive coordinator. And again, I think they made some solid picks. I think there are some weaknesses, like the pass rush, but I feel like the 12th man's going to really help out. I think this is actually a game where the offense could go off, where the running game could actually hurt the Giants defensively. You got Geno Smith at quarterback. You got Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker at running back. We saw that last season. They did draft Christian Haynes. That's a really good signing. They did lose a guy in Damian Lewis. They signed Laken Tomlinson, who needs a really good year. Jackson Smith and Jigba, he's coming into his own. He needs another year to groom with DK Metcalf and the rest of the receiving core. Tyler Lockett, too. Solid tight end core. Again, we'll see with the offensive line. I think the Giants can take advantage of their offensive line, but I feel like it's going to be a quick game. I think this might be a game where Cordell Flott does get exposed, especially if the Giants tend to run zone and maybe he's confused because he's had trouble in the past with zone defenses and really processing, the type of plays that they're running and the coverages and whatnot. I'm not too scared of their defense. In the front, the back does scare me a little bit if they know how to do it. Julian Love, solid. We know who he is. Kobe Bryant, Mike Jackson, David Witherspoon, and Rick Woolen, those guys do scare me. So if Daniel Jones doesn't make the right decision, then he's going to end up paying big time. But again, we do know what this defense can do. We saw a similar defense in 2022 absolutely lock up the Giants. Yes, it is, a worse receiving core. Now we move to Sunday Night Football. This is a really odd game. The New York Giants, the way they will lose the 4th in a row, and I get it. Sometimes these games are predictable. Sometimes you could pick one out. But with that said, I do have the New York Giants losing the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, we don't know what's going to happen with the T. Higgins situation, whether he's going to play, whether he's not going to play. I still fear Jamar Chase. I feel like he's going to cook Deontay Banks a little bit. I have to be honest. Jamar Chase is one of the top receivers in the league. Joe Burrow, we know what he can do. Obviously, probably the second best quarterback in the league. Their offensive line did get some upgrades with Trent Brown coming over from the Patriots and also Marius Mims getting drafted out of Georgia. And their defense, it's pretty solid. It's not great. Logan Wilson is one of the more underrated pieces. When you look at the Bengals, you really don't look at their defense, but Logan Wilson's one of the top guys in the NFL. They got Geno Stone, who was a pick machine in Baltimore. DJ Turner out of Michigan. He's looking to come into his own. Mike Hilton as well. So that secondary could be a unit that the New York Giants look to take advantage of. But they do have a litany of defensive linemen. Trey Hendrickson, I know there's some contract crap there. BJ Hill, who has totally reinvented himself in Cincinnati. You also got Sam Hubbard, who is on the other side. Joseph Asai and Miles Murphy are ready to step in if Trey Hendrickson does not play due to contract negotiations. But I feel like this is a game that the Giants, talent-wise, are outmatched. Now we go with Philly Week 7. The New York Giants, again, not on primetime, but this is Saquon Barkley's return to the Meadowlands, MetLife Stadium. And I actually have the Giants winning this game. You know, you can't necessarily sit here and say, oh, well, you know, the Giants are going to win this game, this game, this game, and just like pick according to your thoughts. Once in a while, you do have to be bold. Once in a while, you do have to say, hey, the Giants are going to win this game because it's going to be one of those games that, you know, nobody expects them to win, but they do. Funny enough, I think it was a similar week last year that the New York Giants actually capped off. That the Jets capped off Philly. But nonetheless, Jalen Hurts, it's pretty much the same team. They did have Jason Kelce retire, which means Tyler Steen will probably fill in at one of the offensive line positions. If not, it's Trevor Keegan or one of the depth guys they did sign. So I feel like this is a game where if Shane Bowen is in his bag, and I think he will be in his bag for this game, make Jalen Hurts pass the ball, stop Saquon Barkley in his tracks, and really just have a bend but don't break style and just take advantage of the mistakes. Like, one game to model yourself off of, if you're Shane Bowen, is that game, the last time the Giants beat the Eagles not even that, because technically last year you could call it as meaningful when they beat the Eagles at MetLife, but when Joe Judge and Patrick Graham were on the staff. 2021, Giants beat the Eagles, and it was a pretty low-scoring game. I think it was like 13-6, 13-7. But they picked Jalen Hurts off 3 times. So that's key. Getting the turnovers, having Jalen Hurts force those fumbles and lose those fumbles, I think the Giants win this game. So another tough matchup. They go to the state of Pennsylvania for this one. I was kind of thinking of going to this game, but I'm like, no, it's a Monday night. The Pittsburgh Steelers host the New York Giants on Monday Night Football. I have the Giants losing this game. It is a brutal game. I think it is a brutal way to put it. Russell Wilson obviously signed for a minimum contract because he's getting all that money from the Denver Broncos. George Pickens, they drafted Roman Wilson, who is a solid weapon out of Michigan. Najee Harris, and even if you don't have Najee Harris, you still have good tools in Cordero Patterson and Jalen Warren in the backfield. Their offensive line I really like. They added Zach Frazier, Troy Fatano, and even Mason McCormick for depth purposes. You're looking at a second-year man in Darnell Washington and Pat Freiermuth, who really blew onto the scene last year. And their defense is pretty damn scary. And I think that's really where the Giants are going to have a lot of trouble. Both of their sides, even the third pass rusher is where the Giants are going to struggle. You have TJ Watt, you have Alex Highsmith, who was recently extended, and Nick Herbig, who they drafted out of Wisconsin, who's Nate Herbig's brother. He is a guy that you got to look out for. Now, again, we'll see what happens with this contract situation for Cam Hayward. I think he's going to play. He's 35. He's got to play. Larry Ogunjobi is still a good defensive tackle in this league, and they also have a second-year man in Keanu Benton. But that pass rushing core scares me. Now, as far as the secondary goes, it's not as scary. Joey Porter Jr. coming into his second year alongside Thomas Graham Jr. Also, Dante Jackson in a pick swap and a trade with the Carolina Panthers. So the New York Giants just seem under-talented and outmatched when you look at these two rosters. And even the destination, Monday Night Football, Pittsburgh Steelers, great on Monday Night Football. So that's just going to be an L for that. The New York Giants, the next week, they do face Washington, and I have them taking an L. I think at this point in the season, Washington could still struggle, but look to find their footing and say, okay, the New York Giants just lost on Monday Night Football. A little bit of a shorter rest than usual. Let's take a game at their house since they took a game at our house. And I have the New York Giants losing this game to Washington. Sorry, guys. I'm not on that, we're going to sweep Washington every year stuff. They are getting better, and the Giants have to match that, but I have them splitting this season. Now they go to Germany. The Giants, I don't think, have lost an international game yet, but this is a very, very interesting Carolina Panthers team. You got Bryce Young in his second year, backed up by Andy Dalton. You do have Jonathan Brooks in the backfield, who will be coming off of an ACL injury he suffered at Texas, with Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders in the backfield. They traded for Deontay Johnson. They still have Adam Thielen. Not great offensively, as you can see. The offensive line, they made some very expensive reinforcements. They drafted Andrew Rame. They signed a guy in Yosh Nijman. They spent how many millions of dollars in the interior? They still have Austin Corbett at center, but you have on one side, you have a guy in Damian Lewis. On the other side, you got a guy in Robert Hunt. Two different destinations. So hopefully, if you're a Panthers fan at this time, they try to mold, they try to gel. And I think the Giants, again, will find their footing defensively in this game. So there's that. And also Brian Burns' revenge game. Defensively, solid pieces, but you do have to keep in mind Ejiro Evero is one of the best defensive coaches in the league. Defensively, again, not too many guys that really jump off the page. Clavin Chasen, they signed from Jacksonville. Jadeveon Clowney, they signed, who had a really good season last year. Eshawn Robinson, we know who he is. Derek Brown is one of the top guys on that defense, probably the top guy. And then you go to the secondary, not too many names to know other than Troy Hill, and then when healthy, J.C. Horn is one of the best. I think the Giants take this game right before the bye. And then they come out of the bye week 12, similar to 2021, but they actually similar to 2022. Well, not 2022, but 2020. Nonetheless, Tampa Bay. I think this is a team that a lot of Giant fans may say, oh yeah, we're going to win this game. I think they're going to put up a dogfight. I think this could be one of two things, and it's still going to be a dogfight either way. I think it's going to be either an offensive shootout or it's going to be a grind and grit game. Baker Mayfield signed a contract after winning a playoff game against the Philadelphia Eagles, and Bucs fans love him. That backfield just got better with Bucky Irving. They still got some good weapons in Mike Evans, who's still there, Chris Godwin, all these other different guys. They drafted Jalen McMillan out of Washington as well, and Delvin Culp, the tight end. Their offensive line is pretty solid. I think a lot of people just, say, it's not that good. They signed Ben Bredeson from the Giants. We know him. Graham Barton, they drafted out of Duke to be the center in the long term. Tristan Wirfs is the left tackle. Solid right side. Cody Mauch and Luke Gadecki. Now defensively, Todd Bowles, again, defensive coach. They drafted Chris Braswell as a pass rusher. They really needed that reinforcement because Joe Tryon-Shoyinka really hasn't been much. Jose Ramirez, also a 6th-round pick. They also got some good production out of Yaya Diaby last year. And they signed Randy Gregory. So solid in that linebacking core. They still have Levante David, no more Devin White. They're looking for some solid improvements from Kalijah Kancey. And as far as that secondary goes, Jamel Dean, one of the better corners. Zion McCollum needs to step up. And Jordan Whitehead, the former Jet safety, who can't really tackle, but he can do some other things as well. But I think this is going to be a dogfight game. The New York Giants go ahead and lose this game, unfortunately. So right now, at this point, the Giants would have 4 wins by week 12. Now, minus the 1, so week 12 would be 4-8, 4-7. And another unfavorable game, the New York Giants, I have them losing on Thanksgiving. I think that was one of the worst ones they could have put in the schedule other than Monday Night Football. Dallas Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Makes me want to puke out and not even want Thanksgiving. But nonetheless, we move to the next week. That is the New Orleans Saints. And I have the Giants winning this game. The Giants played the Saints last year. I think if they had a better team and that they were more healthy, I think the Giants could have beaten the Saints in their own stadium. This is not their own stadium. This is outside. And I happen to think that the Saints play a little bit worse when they are outside. Now, it could change. Clint Kubiak, the new offensive coordinator. Joe Woods, the defensive coordinator. Obviously you still have a guy in Chris Olave, but you don't have much help around him. That's just my personal opinion. Michael Thomas is not there anymore, And Alvin Kamara, when healthy, one of the better backs. Jamal Williams as a second back. They do have some questions on the offensive line, though. They drafted an offensive lineman high in Talis Fuaga, who could go inside or out. They're worried about Ryan Ramczyk. But otherwise, other than that, I mean, Eric McCoy, solid center. As far as the other guys, can't really bank on too much of them. Cesar Ruiz also got his option declined. Now, defensively, I think they could do really well here as far as coaching goes. Joe Woods, solid defensive coordinator. Dennis Allen, a very much defensive head coach. As far as the secondary goes, Paulson Adebo, really good corner. I like the draft pick of Kool-Aid McKinstry. Hugo Amadi, safety they signed. Jonathan Abram, again, probably not going to do too much. He's been kind of floating around the league. Carl Jefferson got a contract extension not too long ago. Chase Young on a one-year contract, so he's going to look to prove some things. Isaiah Foskey as well alongside Cam Jordan. So, yeah, it's listing names and whatnot. And also Demario Davis, one of the better linebackers in football in that middle. Now, this is going to be a grit and grind game. I don't see the Giants winning a lot of shootouts this season or even putting themselves in shootouts. But nonetheless, I have the Giants winning this game. So, at this point in the season, they will have 5 wins in Week 14. So, that will be 5-8. The next game, tough. Very, very tough at home against Baltimore. Now, this could be a game that they just catch Lamar Jackson on an off day. With that said, again, I have them losing. They have a solid receiving core. Lamar Jackson, quarterback. Derrick Henry in the backfield. So that's going to be a very much mind game to play with the New York Giants, the defense. They have a very solid offensive line as well. They drafted Roger Rosengarten to replace Morgan Moses on the right side. But again, Ronnie Stanley, when healthy, he's one of the best. Mark Andrews, the best tight end. Well, actually, I can't say that because Travis Kelce still exists, but he's one of the best tight ends in all of football. They signed Justin Matabuki to a long-term extension. Michael Pierce, solid defensive lineman as well. They keep stacking up on these different pass rushers. Obviously, they have Roquan Smith, one of the better inside linebackers in football. They drafted Adisa Isaac to go alongside Odafe Away and David Ojabo. And as far as the defense goes, I like the way they drafted. TJ Tampa, after drafting Nate Wiggins and still have Marlon Humphrey there with Brandon Stevens. I know that they did lose a key guy in Mike McDonald, but I feel like Zach Orr is going to take it right off the page and right where he left off. Now we move to Week 16. We're almost done here. Week 16 against Atlanta. And I will say the Giants win this game. I feel like, Kirk Cousins does have that aura in a dome in Mercedes-Benz. I think that's the Atlanta Falcons field. But nonetheless, the backfield, I think they could definitely use some reinforcements. Well, actually, they made reinforcements, better yet. And they have a new coaching staff. Raheem Morris, Zach Robinson, OC, Jimmy Lake, DC. I think this could be, again, another grit and grind game, but it could also be more of a shootout game because a new offensive coordinator, good weapons, or at least solid weapons, one of the better offensive lines in football. They kept Dwayne Ledford as the offensive coordinator, and the Giants are playing in a dome as well, so that could really help. Now, defensively, they added some pieces with Ruko Horhoro and Brandon Dorless. As far as the linebacking core and the pass rushing, it's not really great there. I think the Giants can take advantage. The only guy that's notable is Lorenzo Carter alongside Braylon Trice. And defensively, as far as the cornerbacks go, they signed Kevin King, but A.J. Terrell, he's one of the better cornerbacks in the NFL. So I think the Giants win this game. Now you go against a developed, at least at this point you hope so, Indianapolis Colts team who is hoping to get Anthony Richardson back really, really healthy and developed again. Jonathan Taylor, Adonai Mitchell, Michael Pittman on an extension to go alongside Alec Pierce and Josh Downs, who had a really solid season last year. Decent tight end core, offensive line group that's been tooled around with a little bit, and a decent defense. Gus Bradley, I think he's one of the better defensive coordinators in the NFL. Couple of guys they took, Jalen Simpson. I mean, that's more of a late round pick, so I don't know if he's going to have the impact. But Laiatu, the pass rusher they drafted out of UCLA, I am scared of his matchup against Evan Neal. Evan Neal should win, but nonetheless, there could be some different changes there. Again, they didn't make too many reinforcements in the secondary. They did re-sign a guy in Julian Blackmon. But other than that, that's pretty much it. So I think the New York Giants will actually lose this game. I feel like it's going to be a game where the New York Giants should win. They may win, but I think they will drop it. And Week 18 in Philly, I think at this point, whether the stakes are high, the stakes are low, the Giants really haven't won in Philly. They haven't won in Philly in 10 years, believe it or not. Whether it's close or it's a blowout, I think the New York Giants will lose. And I think the New York Giants will have a record of, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wins. They will go 6-11 in 2024. Tough schedule, tough composition. But the New York Giants, again, I expect them to make the playoffs. We'll see how it unravels. Way too early predictions for you guys. Sorry if it's a little long, but like, comment, subscribe to all the good stuff. Turn on post notifications so you know when the live stream pops or drops. Appreciate you coming back. Peace out, guys. See you later. Stay cool.